Let's talk about aspect ratios. This is where we relate the image width to the image height, and a ratio is always something to something. So I can have an aspect ratio here that is 16 units wide by 9 units high. So we can write that out as 16 to 9. One of the ways to recognize this is to take the width and divide by the height. So I could take 16 divided by 9, and that gives me the 1.7 repeating. A lot of times we just kind of round this off as a 1.78, and I mentioned something to something for a ratio, so we would say this is a 1.78 to 1. So I can express the 16 by 9 as 16 by 9, or I can express it as 1.78 to 1. We can do this with other aspect ratios as well. We can do this with a 16 by 10. So I can take 16 divided by 10, and that gives me 1.6. So I could say it's a 16 by 10, or I could say it's a 1.6 to 1. We could do this with some older, like 4 by 3, or even older 5 by 4 aspect ratios. The 4 by 3, simply 4 divided by 3. Again, 1.3 repeating. Sometimes we see this as 1.33 to 1. The 5 by 4, 5 divided by 4, gives us a 1.25 to 1. We can use the actual aspect ratios, or we can even use the resolution. Let's take something that we would know, a 1920 by 1080. 1920 being the width, 1080 being the height. So let's take 1920 and divide that by 1080. There's our 1.78 to 1. Our 1.78 to 1, or also what we know as our 16 by 9. We can do this the same thing with 4K resolution. We can do the consumer 4K, what we know as the UHD, which we know as 3840 by 2160. So let's divide the 3840 divided by 2160. Again, a 1.78 to 1, 16:9. Let's take the DCI 4K resolution. That's going to be a little different. We know DCI 4096 by 2160. So 4096 divided by 2160. You can see 1.89 and the rest of that. Sometimes we refer to this as a 1.9 to 1 aspect ratio. So we're just relating the width to the height, and we can use actual dimensions, or we can actually use the resolutions and come up, and this is just one of the ways to recognize our various aspect ratios.